September 9th.
And the center of Moscow has been blown up.
In the center! In the center!
Basically, something just exploded. The vibration. It was a drone. Everyone woke up. We don't even know yet which tower got hit.
The new Flamingo missiles are striking Moscow. Russia has been attacked again.
Part of the capital, residential complex, Moscow City.
Donald Trump is sending self-guided missiles and JASSMs to strike Moscow. I caught that on camera. The third phase of the Special Operation Web has begun.
Quiet, quiet, quiet.
Are you filming? Yes! Unbelievable! Moscow airports are closed. Sabotage and gunfire near the Kremlin. Muscovites are in panic. Evacuation has begun. What's going on? Guys, there are families and children coming home from work. The SBU is preparing new acts of sabotage on Russian territory. Moscow, St. Petersburg, get ready to evacuate. We'll discuss all this with Ruslan Kutaev right now.
So, there was indeed a missile strike that occurred.
A new phase of the war. In the past 48 hours, Ukraine has delivered a series of devastating strikes. Gas pipelines in Khanty-Mansi Autonomous Okrug. Explosions 3,000 kilometers from Moscow. Strikes on the Pacific Fleet, the Black Sea Fleet. Russia is losing, depots destroyed, airfields, central military district in Borisogledsk, oil refineries burning. But most importantly, thousands of drones are flying toward Moscow and St. Petersburg. And Donald Trump has decided to provide Ukraine with JASSM missiles, American missiles that will strike Moscow and St. Petersburg with a range of 1,000 kilometers. And that's incredibly powerful. Moreover, he made a statement that he is ready to impose hellish sanctions against Russia. Let's discuss all this with the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutaev. Ruslan Kamitic, welcome.
Dasha, hello to you. Greet our esteemed viewers.
Ruslan Kamitic, a new phase of the war. 1,000 drones are flying toward Moscow and St. Petersburg. Moreover, the American JASSM missiles are ready to be deployed. What do you think?
I want to remind you of Zaluzhny's remarkable article from back in the day, where he said, "I warn both America and European countries, in modern life, in modern warfare, it is not people who win, but technology." And Ukraine did just that, because at the time, then Commander Zaluzhny laid that groundwork. The Ukrainian authorities understood this, and I think Europe did too, without a doubt. And when it comes to these drone technologies, Ukraine has made real progress. I always say this with pleasure. The ingenuity of Ukrainian scientists is so great that now their drones easily fly beyond the Ural Mountains. They carry out strikes, they inflict damage, and they do this on a massive scale. That's right. Here, as you said, they can reach St. Petersburg, Moscow, and any military targets. Unlike the Russians, the Ukrainians strike specifically at strategic targets, military targets, or, at worst, targets of a semi-military nature. And in this regard, Ukraine has now made significant progress. Putin, in his behavior, such brazen behavior, not only ignores Trump, but is actually quite mocking toward him, especially Putin's propagandists who have started acting this way. Finally, it got through to Trump. At last, someone in Trump's inner circle managed to tell him to show him that in Moscow, they're making fun of him. And he started to make some moves. God willing, he keeps it up. And now America, first of all, the fact that they stopped and then resumed, now they're planning. You're right, long-range missiles will reach their targets. And it won't just be drones anymore. Missiles will be able to reach Moscow, St. Petersburg, and targets that until now have been out of Ukraine's reach. That's good news. That's very good news, because with this significant development, Ukraine is making a fresh, compelling, and important point that the ongoing war is going to reach a crucial turning point. And we have another piece of news as well. Trump himself said, Europe will finance, Europe will pay, and America will sell weapons to Ukraine for Ukraine. And this news, which is steadily reaching us, is also reaching Russia. They're already starting to throw a fit over there. And, well, let them do that. But Ukraine will win. Ukraine will definitely win. And Merz, he's amazing. I just can't get enough of him. Every day he makes such encouraging statements. Defense Minister Merz says such wonderful things. And all of this makes us happy. Why? Because Ukraine will win, because we will overcome the enemy, because we are winning. And this is becoming so obvious now. For me, It was always obvious that never, under any circumstances, would Russia defeat Ukraine. So, these are the good news, Dasha, and we are happy, and we understand that everything is turning out much better than they thought in Russia.
Ruslan Kutaev, what do the 1,000-kilometer range JASSM missiles mean, first and foremost, for Putin? And how will Russian war correspondents and propagandists react to this?
You know, if you think in Russian terms, they'll say they'll be firing there, striking the Kremlin, the State Duma. No, at most, only if Ukraine is forced to, they might go for it. They would target military factories. I want to remind our viewers, Moscow, the Moscow region, both near and far, Tula, Vladimir Oblast, all of these are packed with military enterprises producing weapons, ammunition, and military technologies. And that's why, first and foremost, it's a signal if a drone strikes. But several drones, dozens of drones, can stop a facility, can destroy a facility. And a missile is a nightmare for Russia, for Russians, because with just one or two strikes, these facilities would cease to exist. So this is very good news. This is good news, along with the fact that I want to remind everyone, Ukrainians have not stopped. They are improving the Neptune, which has the same 1,000-kilometer strike range. If anyone thinks that production has been abandoned, they are mistaken. In fact, it seems to me that soon Ukraine won't need either American or European missiles because their scientists are improving and working on their own. And if Ukraine's military-industrial complex starts producing them on an industrial scale in mass quantities, then I can confidently say that it won't take much time, 3 years, 5 years, although unfortunately the conditions of war are tough. But Ukraine itself will soon bring its military-industrial equipment and development complex to such a level that they will confidently be able to even sell to other countries. Good news, Dasha. Good news and good expectations.
Sanfarit, what does Trump's statement about possibly imposing sanctions against Russia mean? Will these be hellish 500% tariffs, or will they be more lenient for the Kremlin and those countries that buy energy resources from the Russian Federation, the aggressor country?
I'll be honest with you, we've already gotten used to Trump's behavior. This is blackmail against Putin. He's blackmailing Putin. They talked about something. They made some kind of deal. As Trump says, they had some sort of arrangement, but apparently Trump didn't fulfill his part of that deal. We suspect that his part was the capitulation of Ukraine. Neither Putin nor Trump together will ever be able to achieve that. And that's why now we can guess what signals Putin and Trump are sending to each other. And these crucial 50 days are precisely what Trump effectively gave to Putin. Either you meet me halfway and we can begin implementing our agreed-upon deal, or I will steadfastly continue to arm and, in essence, financially support Ukraine. It's equivalent. And now Trump will wait to see what initiatives come from Putin. If something comes from Putin that Trump is expecting, Trump could, without batting an eye, change his position with a statement. I think Ukraine understands and realizes this well. In Europe, they understand and realize this too. That's why European countries have set their sails to full strength. Without looking back at America, they have started putting their industrial enterprises into operation, so to speak. I've said it before, Germany, the German automotive sector, Volkswagen for example, announced that they are stopping civilian production and switching to military-industrial development in Germany. So we listen to Trump. We like the way he talks. But to trust Trump completely and rely solely on him would be to deceive ourselves. So we keep moving forward. As long as Trump is providing all this, great, that's good. Even if he stops providing it, when he starts to slow down, I hope Europe will step up and Ukraine will step up. I want, in general, it's important for viewers to hear this. Lately, dear viewers, Ukraine doesn't just want shells and ammunition. They want to develop their industry, their military industry. They want to build up their own military-industrial complex. And that's a state-level approach. And they will produce their own shells, their own missiles, their own drones, and their own aircraft. And here, I'm not overreaching. It won't be long before Ukraine will have and produce its own aircraft. And they already have the foundation for it. We know what Ukraine is capable of: Mykolaiv, shipbuilding, Just imagine what kind of ships will come out of the shipyards of Mykolaiv and Odessa, and that's what we're waiting for. The Caucasus is waiting for such an industrial, strong Ukraine because we are allies, because we are brotherly peoples, and will stand together against our enemies. So, Dasha, these are not just idle hopes of someone lazing around on the stove. These are real actions that are taking place. We are pushing for this to move faster, to go better, and we are happy when this is being done and all of this is really happening.
Dear audience, please like this video. Write a few kind words in support of Ukraine in the comments. We work for an audience all over the world. This is very important. Ruslan Kutaev, a very important point is that Merz still hasn't given us the Taurus missiles. Today, the story with the German Minister of Defense is that he said there will be no Taurus missiles. But as far as we understand, at the end of this month, that is very soon, a batch of missiles, long-range Ukrainian missiles, will arrive. Germany financed the production of these missiles. So essentially, Germany funded a batch of Ukrainian long-range missiles. What do you think about this?
Let's say, fantasize a little bit here. What if the Germans are supplying Taurus missiles, but officially they're just providing funding so that the Taurus warhead, for example, gets rebranded with a Ukrainian name like Bodan or something else? So I wouldn't rule anything out here. And that's why we see Germany's attitude, the stance of Merz, Pistorius. In general, there's a lot more awareness in Europe now. I see it when meeting with German politicians. 2 years ago and now, they're different people. They've suddenly started to realize and understand that the front line isn't just Ukraine's front line in Ukraine, but it's actually the front line of Europe, of Germany and of France in Ukraine. And now, in their understanding, they're even ahead of France, and I dare say even ahead of Britain. Britain, we remember in 2022, in 2021, even before Russia's invasion, the enormous efforts made by both Johnson and Britain when they essentially declared that even if the whole world turned away, Britain, Poland, and Ukraine united would do everything possible to resist Russia's incursion into Ukraine. And that's why even such an ally as Britain, now it seems to me, Germany is overshadowing it with its initiatives and its understanding that victory is necessary. By the way, Merz is already speaking openly about this. Russia must be defeated, Russia must be defeated, and Ukraine will do it. So overall, we expect that every day we will be receiving good news. Good news from the MOD, or rather, from the German defense industry. Complex. Germany.
As for the current situation, Putin is engaged in missile and drone terror. Drones are flying, ballistic missiles, MiGs are taking off. In other words, Putin is constantly attacking Ukraine.
Moreover, at one time, they convinced Putin that for Russia, remember when Margarita Simonian said, we'll just blink or wink and Kyiv will be ours. And so Putin and his emissaries, they convinced the American side that there was nothing to even think about or discuss here. Russia is defeating Ukraine. And so in order for these claims they made to be confirmed, these initiatives are happening so that people like Kellogg would say, yes, Russia has carried out both missile and drone attacks. And all of this has continued. By doing this, Putin thinks he is demonstrating so that it will be reported to Trump that Russia is now carrying out very serious attacks and conducting its military operations against both Kyiv and all of Ukraine. I think there is also a bit of a secret to Putin's behavior here. Nothing will help. Neither persuasion nor ignoring Trump. Trump is now in his own situation. We know for other reasons because of Epstein, but right now MAGA is the very core of Trump's support. They have now turned against him. Trump is now losing ground very seriously, and if he loses his connection with Ukraine, 70% of Republicans, American voters, are in favor of funding and supporting Ukraine. And Trump is not free right now, or maybe if he were free, he would act completely differently because he is in a difficult position. He does not have any particular affection for Ukraine or Ukrainians. And that's why we need to understand that it is the voters, the mood of Americans, including a large part, let's say, of the Reagan wing of the Republicans that supports Ukraine. And that's why we have the situation we have now. All of this taken together puts pressure on Trump. All of this weighs on him, and he is being signaled that Trump should act actively in support of Ukraine. And that's why no initiatives from Putin, none of his maneuvers, no matter how he strikes at peaceful Ukrainians, defenseless children, or women. By the way, their favorite pastime is killing defenseless people. As we know from the two wars in Chechnya, they kill the most vulnerable. They fire at markets, they fire at hospitals, at mosques, at maternity wards. They think that by doing this, they will cause panic. Back then it was the Chechens, now it's the Ukrainians. And they think the Ukrainian population will come out, create some kind of Maidan, and demand that Zelensky stop the war. They don't understand one thing. On the contrary, contempt and hatred toward Putin and the Russians are growing precisely because of their behavior. Now, without hesitation, Ukrainians will fight to the last Ukrainian, but they will never surrender. It's precisely because of this invasion by Putin and his ideology of Russian Nazism.
Dear audience, Ruslan Kutaev and I work for you every week, as always, all over the world, so your support is invaluable. Every like, every comment is priceless. Let us know in the comments what you think about our tandem. What do you think about Trump being ready to provide long-range missiles to Ukraine so it can strike military targets in Moscow and St. Petersburg? And now I can't help but ask you, what if Europe lets oil prices drop to $45 per barrel? If Trump, by September, definitely, yes, he will impose sanctions more precisely. The Senate is imposing sanctions against Russia, secondary ones. Could this shake the Kremlin regime, Islam Kabdich, or Putin? All of this will be from an economic standpoint. From a military perspective, it doesn't matter, because for him, waging war against Ukraine means political survival.
These are serious sanctions. If he really does, if the Senate is ready, before we talked about 80 people. Now there are 85 supporters, and let me remind you, there are only 100 people in the Senate, so this is a very significant number. The Senate is ready to support Ukraine. The Senate is indeed imposing very aggressive sanctions. They are considered aggressive because they will target buyers of Russian oil, specifically the buyers. And who are these buyers? That's China and India. It won't be profitable for them because with these sanctions, it will be better for them to buy Iranian, Saudi, or any other oil, since their losses would be significant. And that's a very serious blow. It's an extremely serious blow to Russia, to Russia's economy. Dasha, you and I have talked about this many times. We've cited the numbers. The economy in Russia has already hit rock bottom. Right now, all it takes is to give that little house a shake and it will simply collapse. And frankly, everyone will be buried in its ruins. That's why the situation in Russia is extremely difficult. And if these sanctions start to take effect, it will finish off Russia's economy and the front will fall apart. And that raises some very interesting questions. I've been saying this since the very beginning of the war. 1.5 to 2 million murderers, killers from prisons, from wherever you can imagine. Even if they drove normal people there to the front, they turned them into killers. People who despise Putin, they despise the authorities, because in those meat grinder assaults, if they survive, they come out only with contempt and hatred for the Russian government. And everywhere you look, there are always significant and persistent problems for Russia, for the Russian authorities, for the prevailing Russian ideology. And that, in fact, is truly good news both for the progressive world and for Ukraine.
Donald Trump's statement, the US and NATO reached an agreement on weapon supply to Ukraine. As I understand it, NATO will be paying the United States of America for the supply of weapons. Another statement from the President of the United States. The US will impose secondary sanctions against Russia and its partners if there is no deal for a peaceful settlement in Ukraine. The United States will impose 100% import tariffs on Russia and its trading partners if Moscow and Washington do not reach an agreement on Ukraine. NATO and the US permanent representative to the alliance will be 100% responsible for coordinating the supply of American weapons to Ukraine. Whitaker. Trump stated that he is dissatisfied with Russia's position on Ukraine. Billions of dollars in military equipment will be quickly paid for by NATO and distributed on the battlefield in Ukraine. We received the figure of 100%. The United States will impose 100% import tariffs on Russia and its trading partners. This sounds very realistic and very strong. In fact, because we understand perfectly well that 500 is a lot, it wasn't very realistic, but 100% is also a lot, yet it's realistic. What do you think? What will China and India do then? At that moment, It's not very interesting to watch.
Dasha, 500% really is just made up. 100% is enough. If you want to know, 50% is already a lot. 100% is devastating. 100% is devastating. And that's why now look at how Trump's rhetoric has softened. Before, he wouldn't even allow talk about NATO supplying weapons to Ukraine. He said that European countries could do it if they wanted to. He raised the issue to rule out NATO supplying weapons because the US is a NATO member country. Now, you see, the United States itself is saying that through NATO, we will supply weapons. What a shift, a change in America's attitude, and above all, Donald Trump's attitude toward Ukraine. It's noticeable. And here you're absolutely right. If before it was 500% pure fantasy, now they're moving into a more practical realm, both in terms of understanding and people and states and heads of state, in fact, as well as politicians, political scientists, and experts. 100% is a good number. It's a powerful figure, and it already looks and sounds much more realistic.
As for Trump's statements, another 17 Patriot systems are being prepared for shipment. A large number of these systems will be on the battlefield. We've spent about 350 billion on the Russia-Ukraine war. We wanted it to end. Ukraine will feel that it has become stronger. 17 Patriot systems. The introduction of secondary tariffs by the US in the absence of progress on Ukraine will not require congressional approval. So essentially, we've met here to discuss the key statements made by Trump on Monday. 17 Patriot systems. What do you think?
That's very significant. In order to protect Ukraine, experts said that at least a few more are needed. 7 to 9 Patriots, if America had already provided at least that many, not just for the frontline areas, but for the deeper regions, say Odessa, Kyiv, and other regions, they would be fully covered. 17 Patriots. This means that all of Ukraine will be covered. This means that the already supplied F-16s will be able to operate very effectively, inflicting serious damage. Why is that? Because when the skies are protected and there is no threat of attacks from the Russian side, then even the Ukrainian Air Force, though it may be small, will be able to operate and operate effectively. And here, everything is a plus. And these significant advantages are now clearly starting to form a robust chain of new relations being steadily built between America, that is, specifically Trump, and the nation of Ukraine. And this can't help but make us happy. And we sincerely hope that these initiatives he has announced won't just remain as proposals, but will actually be put into practice. At the same time, I want to tell the viewers, this is important, because I am often asked the question, what if America, what if Trump suspends these announced initiatives and doesn't follow through? Dear viewers, the political and military leadership of Ukraine is working so seriously with European countries, with European ministries of defense, that they are trying during this time, during this period, to make up for any potential losses from America. I think it won't be long before, frankly, America won't even be needed anymore. Yes, today it is needed. Yes, until autumn, America is definitely needed. We know one thing for sure. Russia's summer offensive has completely failed. They wanted to blackmail Ukraine by approaching Sumy and Zaporizhia. By shelling these cities and using blackmail, they hoped Ukraine would retreat and give up some territories. They didn't succeed at all. You should read and listen to the Russian war correspondents. They're screaming, they're tearing their hair out in one place and everywhere because everything they planned has failed. And it will only get better from here. Much better. I've always said, even a year ago, that in the fall, September or October 2025, Russia will have to admit that they can't do anything anymore. And after that, there will be a lull. But that calm won't last long. Ukraine will go on the offensive. How will they organize it? How will it be structured? I'm not going to say I'm not a military expert, but I can say with confidence Russia will be completely convinced. Even Russian war correspondents are already saying, that's it, we won't be able to do anything anymore. Meanwhile, Ukraine, with new technologies, new supplies of missiles, longer range aircraft and aviation, what Ukraine lacks is control of the skies. If Ukraine's skies were protected by air defense systems, missile defense, and aircraft, Ukraine would have won long ago and peace would have come to Ukrainian soil. We are waiting for this. And these are not empty hopes. This is a clear and consistently implemented course of action by the Ukrainian political and military leadership, which shows that they know where to go and they are leading Ukraine and Ukrainians in the right direction towards victory. Ukraine's victory over Russia.
Pavel Mikhailovich, to wrap up, let me mention a few more quotes from Trump's major statements. Trump stated that Putin won't fool him, and when the talking ends, actions begin. Next, the reporter made a statement. If Putin continues to escalate, how far are you willing to go in response? Trump, in what way? How far are you willing to go in response if Putin intensifies his missile and drone attacks on Ukraine? Trump, don't ask me such questions. Pavel Mikhailovich, what do you have to say?
He fully understands that if Russia truly continues its aggressive actions, doesn't cease its relentless assault, and persistently keeps bombing Ukraine, indiscriminately bombing its cities and infrastructure, then the consequences will be dire. These civilians' social infrastructure, then Trump will have no choice. The whole world already knows this, and he will have to take action. Some more effective measures against Russia. And here is another question. And Russia cannot stop. As soon as the war stops, in fact, Putin's power, his rule, will be called into question because there are those who have been lying low, those who have been close to him. What for 25 years was the foundation of his rule, the FSB, today has become his enemy. And it is precisely the war waged by the Ministry of Defense, the actions of its units in Ukraine, that prevents the FSB from openly calling for action and from trying to overthrow Putin. That is why Putin has major problems. As long as he has the strength, power, influence, and resources, he will continue to push forward in Ukraine. But I really hope that the set of measures that America might take in this case will simply leave him without the strength to continue. And then that will be the end of both Putin and his regime. And then they will start sorting things out among themselves. There are plenty of players, FSB and Putin. Those 1.5 to 2 million people whom they sent to kill on the front lines, these killers, now having gained nothing in Ukraine, will go to kill there in the corridors of power. Yes, they will kill Muslims. They will be directed. Their anger will be channeled against the peoples of the Caucasus. But it's still unknown how this will end. We are preparing for this very seriously and counting on it. In the end, this evil emanating throughout the world, spreading murder and violence, the Kremlin of Russia will eventually collapse. We are doing everything to make that happen. And Ukraine is at the forefront of this war and this struggle.
Dear audience, every week we work for you together with Ruslan Kutaev. Please give this a like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Today we discussed the possibility of Trump transferring JASSM missiles to Ukraine, which can strike military targets in Moscow and St. Petersburg. A shift in Trump's military rhetoric. He will support Ukraine, provide it with offensive and defensive weapons, including 17 Patriot systems. NATO will purchase weapons for Ukraine from the United States, as well as impose 100% secondary tariffs on Russia. In other words, countries that buy energy resources from Russia will be hit with 100% tariffs. If Putin does not stop, the Senate may vote for this bill. President of the Assembly of Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutaev. Ruslan Muhammadovich, thank you, and as usual, see you next week.
All the best. Take care. See you soon.